What is up, FXLay here for Thomann synthesizers, and Elektron sent me an early copy of the latest OS update for the Digitakt, and today I'm gonna have a little look at what are some of the most important features and how to utilize them. So let's go. Alright, here we go with the Digitakt, and I already installed the latest OS and played around with it for a while, and I think the biggest and most interesting new thing are going to be the 4 machines. What are machines? Machines, as you know from many other Elektron machines like the Octatrack or Analog Rytm, are usually audio tools within the operating system that handle audio in a particular way. In this case, it's going to be 4 software samplers, effectively, all of which are going to handle samples in a slightly different way, specialized for different purposes. Whereas before it was just one way of sampling here. I'm going to pick one sample in this case and load it into each of the 4 machines to show you how they operate. In this case, I'm using the Funky Drummer Loop by James Brown. And right now it's loaded up into the one-shot machine. So, as the name suggests, this is for one-shot samples like kick drums, snares, hi-hats, whatever. So you basically just trigger the sound and it's going to be played in its entirety, but you can add filtration and an envelope and all that sort of stuff. But it's not so useful for breakbeats because, for example, let's see what happens here. If I try to loop it, it's not going to be looping perfectly unless by accident, because the tempo magically fits. So another machine might be more useful. So next, let's look at the Werp Machine, which is a warping algorithm, effectively. So now if I play back the sound and choose the right setting, it's going to loop perfectly. And because it's warped, the pitch is going to stay consistent even if I change the tempo. What's the drawback? If I diverge a lot from the original tempo, some warping artifacts might start to occur, but here they aren't even that drastic. An alternative to this would be the next machine, which is called Repitch, and as the name suggests, it's going to do the same thing to fit my loop into the one bar in this case, but it's going to repitch the sample instead of warping it. So now it's also perfectly looping, but when I change the tempo, it's like on a record player basically. The slower I go, the lower the pitch goes, and vice versa. Yeah? What is the advantage of this? That you're not going to have any warping artifacts that are undesirable potentially. But the drawback is that you don't have control over the exact pitch of the sample. So the Werp algorithm might, for example, be even more useful for pads and melodic sounds that have to stay in a certain key, for example. Now lastly, and for me most excitingly, let's load this loop up into the slice machine, which, as the name suggests, allows us to slice the sample into individual slices. And now the workflow is basically exactly like the slicing workflow on the Octatrack. Here I can select the grid size to slice it into finer and finer pieces. I think for this sample 8 is the ideal amount for me, because this way I always have a drum hit and a little hi-hat. And now I can, of course, not just play it, but I can also sequence these slices. By default, the first slice is going to be sequenced, so in this case the kick drum. But as you might imagine, I can also hold a trigger and then select a different slice to be played there. And then also copy and paste individual slices. and then apply effects. Yeah, giving me endless possibilities. And now, lastly, let's maybe have a look at the more complex pattern that I already built here, and afterwards I'm going to walk you through yeah, the individual tracks and how I use the different machines. Alright, starting out with the first track, which in this case is just a kick drum sample. So of course I'm using the one-shot mode, even though this is taken from a loop, but I addressed that by altering the loop length here. So now it's just playing this first kick drum here, and I sequence it like this. Next track is going to be a bit more interesting. This is now the slicing machine. This is a breakbeat sample, and as you can see here, various slices are being played back. On the third track, I'm playing back this audio recording of, I think, the Deckard's Dream. And because the sample is just too long, too many chords, I just took slices and then from these slices constructed this chord progression. Alright, up next. This is just a regular old drum bass type breakbeat, and for that I used the Repitch Machine because I didn't want any warping artifacts. So if I now change the tempo, the pitch is going to change. Yeah. Up next, this vocal sample here on track 5. This is loaded into the one-shot machine. Here hi-hat as one-shot. Another hi-hat, open hi-hat as one-shot. And lastly, this effect sound, which is kind of lovely. And for this, I used the Werp Machine. Actually, the original sample sounds like this. And with the warp algorithm and these segment settings and bar settings, I was able to achieve this effect. And as you can hear, there's a panning automation basically. I use the LFO to control the panning from left to right, then added reverb to pronounce the effect even more, and that's it. Alright, I guess that's it from my side for today. In case you have any questions, as usual, let me know in the comments and I'm gonna try and get back to you ASAP. Apart from that, thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Peace out. Sick.